Good evening. Welcome to the April 10th, 2025 meeting of the Minnetonka Planning Commission. The Commission generally meets twice a month, always on a Thursday. The schedule and tentative meeting agendas can be obtained by calling the Planning Division or by checking the city website. The Commission holds public hearings on land use applications. For all applications, the city notifies property owners within at least 400 feet of the site and posts plans and information on the website. For some applications, the city also places signs on the properties and notices in the Sun Sailor. From a specific process standpoint, the Commission makes recommendations to the City Council on rezonings, subdivisions, conditional use permits, and amendments to the city's comprehensive guide plan, zoning ordinance, and subdivision regulations. We also make final decisions on site plans, signage requests, variance requests, and expansion permits unless these requests are part of an application that must be heard by the City Council, in which case the Commission makes a recommendation and the Council makes the final decision. Anyone aggrieved by a final Planning Commission decision may appeal the decision to the City Council. You must submit a written request to the city staff within 10 days of this meeting. From a broader standpoint, the city's comprehensive guide plan, zoning ordinance, and subdivision regulations are the city's best efforts to codify a balance between individual rights and community responsibilities. Individual rights are easy to understand. Community responsibilities are more subtle, but the idea is that we, as members of the community, agree to limit our individual rights for the common good of the group. The Planning Division, the Planning Commission, and the City Council are charged with managing this sometimes difficult balancing act. We ask that you keep this broader perspective in mind as we review tonight's applications. Again, welcome. Staff, please call roll.
Banks is absent. Brink?
Here.
Hanson absent. Henry?
Here.
Minion absent. Waterman?
Here.
Chair Maxwell.
I'm here. There are 4 of us seated tonight. Next on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Staff, are there any changes? I believe there's a change memo.
There is. Thank you, Chair. Yes, we did get a change memo that has a few different items in there. So first off, all of them are for the Tonka Flats subdivision. There are a few additional comments that we received that were not included in the staff report. The first one is from the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. Theirs was noting that they didn't have any comments, so a very small comment, which is a little bit of a positive there. Then also we received one from Hennepin County, which included requests for right-of-way dedication, and then also a request for drainage information. But staff has already included the easement dedication within the resolution for that item, and then also has shared the drainage report. So all those items have been addressed. And then lastly, there was a letter from a resident regarding the subdivision that was generally supportive, but that was also included in that change memo.
Thank you, Mr. Engvaldson. May I have a motion to approve the agenda with the changes noted by staff?
Make the motion.
Motion, Henry. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second, Brink. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Next up on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from our most recent March 27th, 2025 meeting. Commissioners, do you have any changes? All right, may I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Motion Waterman.
I'll second.
Second Henry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Next is item 5, report from the staff.
Thank you, Chair. There's just a few updates we had. There was a council meeting on April 7th this week. At that meeting, there were 2 items that the Commission had heard earlier. One was for an interim use permit and variance for relocation of an existing garden market at 17501 Highway 7. That's the parking lot near Culver's and Northern Tool at the Highway 7-101 intersection. That request was approved. And then the other one was the Lang subdivision request at 5038 Dominic Spur for a 2-lot subdivision with variances. That item was denied at the council meeting. The only other update I have is our next Planning Commission meeting is 2 weeks from now on April 24th. And that's all we got, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ingvelson. Next is item 6, report from planning commissioners. Does anybody have anything to report this week? No, all right, this will be we're moving right along here. All right. Item 7 is the consent agenda. The city staff places items that are considered routine on the consent agenda, so no staff or applicant presentations will be made. The commission will hold one public hearing and approve all items on the consent agenda with one motion, subject to the staff recommendation conditions of approval. Before voting on the consent agenda, I will open the public hearing, announce each item, and ask if anyone wishes to have a separate discussion or vote on that item. In that case, we will remove that item from the consent agenda and hold a separate hearing on it after voting on the remaining items. I will allow informational questions, without removing an item from the consent agenda. So I will now open the public hearing on the consent agenda. The first item is item 7A, a conditional use permit and variance to increase the height of an existing accessory structure at 5315 Dominic Drive. Does any commissioner wish to remove this item from the consent agenda? No, anybody from the public would like to remove this item from consent agenda? No, as no one wishes to speak, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
I'll make the motion.
Motion Henry. Second Brink. Do we have to, staff, please poll the commission.
Brink,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Waterman,
Yes.
Chair Maxwell.
Yes. That item is a recommendation to the City Council that will be heard on the April 21st meeting. All right, next is the non-consent agenda. Before we begin consideration of non-consent items, I'd like to review the steps in the process and the public hearing that will be followed for each proposal. First, the item will be announced and the staff will report on the subject. The commission will then ask questions. Next, the applicant will be invited forward to make a presentation, and commissioners may ask additional questions at this time of the applicant. After they are finished, the public hearing will be opened to give anyone present the opportunity to comment on the proposal. If you wish to speak, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. We ask that you keep your comments brief and try not to repeat points already made. Once everyone has spoken, we may allow speakers to return for additional comments if this is a larger meeting. The first item on today's agenda is item 8A, preliminary plat and floodplain alteration permit for a 4-lot subdivision at 15719 Minnetonka Boulevard.
Thank you, Chair. I'll note there is a typo on here. This is a preliminary and final plat and floodplain alteration permit, so just a quick note to everyone on that part. Moving forward through the item, though. So our first one, it's located here at Minnetonka Boulevard and Tonka Wood Road, to give you a little bit of bearings on this project. So not too far away from where we sit right now. The property that we're looking at, it is 3.16 acres in size, so it's a fairly large lot in Minnetonka. We don't have a whole lot of large acre lots like that, multiple acres. It is zoned R1, guided for low density residential. If you look on here, you can see there previously was 2 buildings on the site. Located here, you can see in sort of this shaded out area. You'll notice this area is probably one of the largest clearings on the property. Otherwise, it's pretty heavily wooded. But those 2 homes were demolished in 2021, so currently the site is vacant. Here's a few street views looking at it from Tonka Wood Road. Here's that clearing area where one of those homes was previously located. Here's another look from Wood Knoll Lane looking north. So it would have been farther back over there, that previous home, but it's fairly wooded near the street. Looking at the existing site, so first talking about topography, there are 2 high points on the site. You'll notice there's, first off, I'll give you some bearings here. This is tilted sideways, so this is north. Here's Minnetonka Boulevard. Here's Tonka Wood Road at the bottom of your screen. High points are located right here on the site and then also over here on the southeast corner. But otherwise, it's relatively flat. There's no steep slopes. This actually looks a little steeper than usual because they used single foot contours. Usually we see 2-foot ones, so it probably looks on here steeper than it actually is. Also, and a big piece of the site is that there's 2 existing floodplains you'll see in blue. So those areas are, again, pretty large, and they get really close to both Minnetonka Boulevard and Tonka Wood Road, which is important, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. But again, those are a really big feature of the site. There's also a lot of trees on the property. Again, we do sort of have that clearing in this location. But there is over 200 regulated trees on the site, so quite a few. This plan actually shows the X's of trees that were being removed. But there's, again, 200 on the site, so looks like a lot, but there are a lot of trees on there in the first place. Here's a look at the proposal that was submitted by the applicant. So proposing to make this one lot and subdividing it into 4 different lots. So you'll look here, there's 3 of them would access off of Tonka Wood Road, and then 1 would access off of Wood Knoll Lane. Just a little bit of history before we get into this. I forgot to add that staff has had several conversations with the applicant before this. Looking back, I was just always like to see how long we've been talking about it, and conversations go back over a year from now. So it's been a long conversation. There's been a lot of changes. I know there's even different uses proposed to start with, but after a lot of those conversations, it's been narrowed down to now keeping it residential, single-family, low-density homes. Start off obviously as a much bigger ideas on here. But again, those conversations changed over time, but brings us to our current submittal today. Again, going back, so those lots, we do have 4 on here. Some characterizations of the lots, they're pretty large still. The lot sizes range from 25,000 square feet to 46,000 square feet. So all of those meeting the minimum lot sizes and all the design requirements. The buildable areas for them also are fairly large. One of them, the smallest one's at 4,400 square feet, but the largest one's at 13,000. So definitely a lot of buildable area there when we're looking at what options someone could possibly have with building on the sites. Looking at grading, there's really pretty minor grading needed to accommodate this site because it is pretty flat. So to accommodate these homes, you'll see some grading lines, but they're pretty minor compared to what we sometimes see for these first home developments. So definitely nothing major there happening. The biggest change that we are seeing here is with that floodplain. And again, you'll see the request in here is also for a floodplain alteration permit. So it includes installing a storm sewer overflow pipes. So currently there is no overflow for the site. That means that when it rains here, that water is going to be here. It's just going to flood out. There's no creeks or things that are going to drain off to a different area. It really just stays here and expands outwards, which is problematic when it's near Minnetonka Boulevard and Tonka Wood Road. So as part of the application, the applicant has chosen to show some piping to actually drain when it gets to those overflow areas and direct that storm sewer through these red pipes that you see here, and then later connecting on Tonka Wood Road underground to the city's larger storm sewer system. So looking here to give you some characteristics, this blue line shows the existing floodplain, and the light blue area is the proposed floodplain area. So you'll see it's a little smaller than what's currently out there, and that's due to these drainage systems. You'll also see, because there's a request for a floodplain alteration, there is a bit of grading within the floodplain. You'll see the green area underneath here, that's showing area where it will be fill, and then red is where it's excavation. The overall net is going to be increasing the storage. So it's not a net fill, it's a net increase in storage. Another item to talk about too with this subdivision is that there were requests for additional right-of-way easements, both from the city and also from the county. So near Wood Knoll Lane, there's a request for about 8 feet. It's an approximate measurement, but the Wood Knoll Lane right-of-way currently is just under 35 feet wide, which is inadequate. It's a very small right-of-way for the city. So we're acquiring a bit of right-of-way there. Then also over here near Minnetonka Boulevard, this one's really to straighten out that area. There's this sort of weird jut out that's occurring currently. So cities have asked for an additional easement there to sort of straighten this line. That'll help with sight lines as you enter Minnetonka Boulevard, which is a busier road, so more easement there, better sight lines, always a benefit when we're seeing a subdivision, something we always look for. So after all this review, staff is recommending approval of the subject request for 3 reasons. First one, the request meets all of the minimum lot size and dimension standards outlined in city code. Next, the application does meet the city's tree protection ordinance. Again, there's 200 trees on the site. There's going to be ones that are going to be removed, but it meets the ordinance what the applicant's requesting with their current plan. Then lastly, after review by the city's engineering division, staff found that the proposed floodplain alteration is suitable for the site, enhances stormwater drainage in the area, and is permitted by ordinance. The Planning Commission's action tonight is a recommendation to the City Council, which is tentatively set for April 21st. With that, I turn it back over to the Chair and Commission for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Engvelson. Does anybody on the commission have questions for staff? Commissioner Henry.
Drew, point me in the right direction. If these questions are better directed at the applicant, I can do that one too. But since you've had a lot of conversations, maybe this is better addressed by the city. In the plat proposal, it shows 3 houses that are on the far western side on Tonkawood Road. Yep, this is a good picture to show it. Is that the only spot in lots number 2 and 3 that houses can be built, or is it going to be up to the discretion of the property buyer that they can build their houses further back in these lots?
Sure, Chair and Commissioner Henry. As with any subdivision, when we get them, excuse me, we always require that there is shown where a home could be put. They're never an exact location or an exact shape or size. There might be a buyer that looks to have a different dimension. So there is discretion there with where it could be put. In theory, it could be put farther back. On these 2 lots specifically, there's quite a bit of buildable area to the rear or farther to the east that they could be put. So there's options for that. So that's something we would see at building permit. The one thing that we do require is that the grading plan is, number one, similar to what's shown. So that is something that the applicant is held to. We do allow minor changes, so that's not something that's really hard and concrete that can't change. The other part too is the tree protection. So any changes would have to still meet the tree protection ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Another question I have is, it looks like in this proposal that the floodplains are not included as part of any of the 4 properties. Is that correct, that they're separate from the 4 properties?
Chair and Commissioner Henry. So they are still part of the properties. What you're probably seeing on there, that line, is actually an easement line. So let's go down here. You'll see these would be drainage and utility easements that the city would be acquiring as part of this. That's what the city could go in there to maintain it if needed, or if there was an emergency, we'd have the ability to correct those issues. So they'll still be part of the property, to answer your question more shortly.
Thank you. This picture makes it pretty clear. Last question I have is, with the floodplain alteration, does the city have any concerns about the drainage? And in terms of looking at it throughout the course of the seasons, is the city expecting to have some water standing in some times of the year, or would it prefer, and currently does it have, let's say, no standing water at any time? They just want to drain it out completely after every rain event or snow melt.
Chair and Commissioner Henry, I will apologize. I am not an engineer, but I'll do my best to pretend that we didn't bring them here tonight. Really, those overflow pipes are to overflow when there is a significant rainstorm. So will there be some water there? Possibly, in my opinion, but it's really those pipes are there to drain it when there is a very large rain event. So if there's currently sitting water there, the site's going to be pretty much the same as it currently is, as far as with where drainage is going, how it's going to sit. However, those pipes are going to drain it when it has those large rain events. That's a really expected change that you would see. Otherwise, it'd be similar to how it currently is.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Drew. That answers it partially. So I'm going to ask that same question to the applicant and see if they have any more specifics on that one. Stay tuned for that. Thank you. That's all that I have.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Brink?
Excuse me, yes. I just have one question related to the right-of-way dedication and grading, particularly Tonkawood Road. We're not asking for any additional right-of-ways there, but I just want to make sure what we have there is wide enough for any future improvements, to Tonkawood Road, and then also perhaps a trail or sidewalk that might be going along there someday, because we do have a regional trail just to the south and trail improvements going on Minnetonka Boulevard. So I just want to, and then the grading of the wetland too kind of extends up into that right away, it looks like too. So I just want want to make sure that's been addressed.
Sure. Chair and Commissioner Brink. Yep, so this, our engineering staff and we have a right-of-way specialist too who reviews all of these applications that come through to look for those things that are coming down the line, making sure we do have adequate right-of-way. And they did find that Tonkawood Road is adequate as it sits today. 33 feet on both sides makes it 66 feet wide, which is good for this size road. That's a decent size. And then I'm just going to make sure we clarify one thing. We're having a floodplain alteration, no wetlands. I heard wetlands in there, so make sure that's clear. We're not doing any wetland alterations, just floodplain. Yeah, looking at that, here is that plan that we showed. But yeah, the floodplain, that was reviewed by our engineering staff, and they felt very confident with what was proposed as far as with the plan.
Thank you.
Commissioner Waterman?
Thanks. Just piggybacking off of one of Commissioner Henry's questions about the floodplain alteration impact during like a major rain event. To be clear, is the city aware of any flooding issues that have been happening in the immediate vicinity, whether it's like onto Tonkawood Road or Minnetonka Boulevard, or for the neighbors?
Commissioner Waterman and Chair, there were concerns about that mainly because of that it is what they call landlocked. There isn't anywhere for that floodplain to go when it does have a big rain event. So that was a concern, and that was why they were felt it was appropriate to have these sort of these overflow facilities. And that was why staff was supportive of those, because there's a lack of really drainage off the site for it.
Have there already been issues?
And they didn't note any issues, our staff. They didn't note anything that's happened immediately, but it was an area of concern.
Okay, thanks. And then second question, it's more of like a nit in the pack. The recommendation in the packet I just noticed this, it mentions a variance. There's no variances tonight, right? This is just a floodplain alteration permit along with the plats.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So I do see right now on my screen that there is a typo on our report too that says preliminary plat. It should say preliminary and final plat. So that is something that should be added to it, which we can note tonight.
Okay.
But yeah, there is no variances associated with this. All the lots meet standards.
I have a sort of a broader land use question. If it's better directed to the applicant, or if it's not in scope, please let me know that. You mentioned that different use proposals were discussed with the applicant, and one of the comments that we got from the public was talking about putting affordable housing or multi-family housing on this site. Could you discuss what you talked about with the applicant, or what other uses were considered to address that comment from the public?
Yep, I'll talk about it a little bit here, Chair, and then I'll let the applicant too discuss those. I know some of them were even before I jumped into this conversation, so it's gone through a few different staff members. But there was a proposal for different higher density housing, more medium density. That would involve, though, a land use change, a rezoning, all these things. And then also I know there were some issues with stormwater too, with a higher density on the site. So there was a lot of different conversations around those and things that were sort of impediments to it. So through those conversations, the applicant chose to go with something that would meet the current zoning, meet the current requirements. I know there's also, if you look around this area, it's pretty much all low density residential. So that was another part where staff was a bit concerned about a higher density use on the site, considering that it is I would call it a C of R1 or C of low density. But I would say that's another question for the applicant too, Chair.
Sure. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Yeah, Commissioner Henry.
Thanks, Chair. I appreciate that. In going through some of the comments from some of the citizens, one of the people mentioned about that the intersection between Tonkawood Road and Minnetonka Boulevard is at a skewed angle. It's not at a true 90-degree angle. And in their opinion, it wasn't ideal. Has city talked to, I know this is a county road, so it's more of a county affair, but Tonkawood Road is not. Is that something that city staff or people within certain departments, do they have any concerns about that intersection? And has there been talk about making that a true right angle between Tonkawood and Minnetonka Boulevard?
Chair and Commissioner Henry. Yes, our engineering staff, whenever they get any application, they always look at that. So one part of this was to acquire, for a part of this application, was to acquire additional right-of-way in this area. A bit out of our scope for tonight. I can give you a little brief talk, but this is a county road, so any project in here would have to be a city-county partnership. If you were to change some things within that right-of-way, the county would also have to be part of those conversations. But if you do look here, Tonkawood Road goes north and south, Highway 5 curves obviously, so this does come in. It does turn a little bit there at Tonkawood Road to try and make more of a 90-degree angle as much as can be. I talked to our engineering staff and they said that that is what, again, that's been trying to be done right there. They didn't mention anything with this request actually that we can go farther into than that really, but more so that we're always looking for ways to improve visibility, obviously, and acquiring this right of way too is a part of that attempt, and then further conversations would need to be had with Hennepin County.
But the city is satisfied with the acquisition of the property in question, that you could make changes to be closer to a 90-degree intersection?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. At this time, the applicant is invited forward to make a presentation or offer comments.
My name is Paul Cameron. I'm a Minnetonka resident. I'm the builder and developer here. With me is Paul Fisher, who's the property owner and the only property owner that's adjacent to the property. They own the property to the east, from Minnetonka Boulevard all the way to Wood Knoll Lane.
Mr. Cameron, would you give your address, please, for the record?
3918 Wilmette Hill, Minnetonka.
Thank you.
So we entered into a partnership with Paul Fisher and his partner on this property. They bought it a number of years ago, and they wanted to see how we could develop that property. We did go through a number of processes, as Drew had mentioned, to look at maybe higher density. For example, we're doing a development in Shorewood, which has about 7 units in about a similar amount of space. Very different topography, and it was not possible with this because of 2 overlying requirements, which obviously you're very aware of, and that is tree and then floodplain together create a complexity that makes it very difficult to have any more density in it. I read the comments by one of the residents about it would be great to have a different kind of setup there, and we would have liked that too, but it's not practical in this situation. So we're trying to develop it the best use for its current configuration, and that's how we came up with the 4 houses. We were going to do plan unit development in terms of these properties, because when you take single family homes that are conforming to the R1 code, it's better to let the customers decide what they want to do and build what they would like. So we are going to be building each of the homes. We're not going to sell the lots. We will sell the lots as part of a build package that we will work with the customers to develop. As far as a couple of questions that you had, mentioned the density, the pipes that are going on here, and I have the engineer here, Lee Effring, who did all the civil engineering, so he can answer any of the water management types of questions. But the floodplains here are kind of surprising to be floodplains. Other than elevation, they don't represent any appearance of water. So there's oak trees in there and different kinds of trees that wouldn't do very well in water. So as far as standing water in there, I don't think there has been, and the trees would be some evidence that they haven't had standing water in those areas. Do you have any other questions? I think the application is pretty straightforward in that it's conforming to all the city requirements, and we just want to make sure that we do the right thing for the customers that do want to build there.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Commissioner Henry, you have a question?
Thanks, Chair. And I'm not sure if this is a better question for you or city staff again, too, but when in the 3, actually all 4 of the properties have some of the floodplain encroaching in on the property, what rights or what can the homeowners, the landowners do after they buy the property? And for example, if they want to cut down all the trees and put a big lawn in there in the floodplain, is that possible, or does the city say that they have to keep the floodplain intact?
If I can answer that question to start, and then we can go back to the applicant too. If we're talking about the tree ordinance, we do have a 2-year lookout clause where there can't be any changes or removals of trees. So an applicant would be held to having those areas there. The other part 2 to this, part 2, and that would cover all trees on the property anywhere. And then part 2 would be, we have these drainage utility easements within here. So there would be restrictions to what you could do in there for tree removal. We'd probably have to look back at that and talk to our natural resources staff on what limits they'd have, but after 2 years a lot of that changes where you can do some removals.
Thanks, Drew. And the 2-year look back period, is that from the date of purchase of the property or from the date of when the house is built?
Date of when approval of the subdivision.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for the applicant? No? All right, thank you. We may have you back later. Thank you.
Thank you.
can hop in. I just was corrected. It's issuance of the CO, of the certificate of occupancy. So from when it's the certificate of occupancy for the home that's built there, it's 2 years from that moment.
All right, at this point, I will open the public hearing. If you would like to speak, please come to the podium, state your name and your address for the record. Questions should be directed to the commission here. We'll hear all of the commentary, and then I will make note of any questions for either the staff or applicant, and we will get those answered at the end of the public hearing.
Hi, my name's Daniel Kroll, and I live at 3532 Tonkawood Road, which is directly across from the Tonkawood Road floodplain. But my question really has to do with, part of it's been answered or already asked, and that's with the intersection of Minnetonka Boulevard and Tonkawood Road. And after turning left from Minnetonka Boulevard onto Tonkawood for decades, to do it properly, you have to go way out and come back in, and so many people cut that corner, and it's dangerous to cut that corner. I guess my question is, I don't believe that it can be turned into a 90-degree angle, but there's not a clear view of Tonkawood, the oncoming traffic up Tonkawood, and I guess my question would be, is on the easement, does that allow for removal of whatever brush and trees to see a little bit more of Tonkawood Road to see what's coming? That's it.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Welcome. Please state your name and your address.
Yeah, my name is Brett Young. I live 3524 Tonkawood Road, so we're right across the street from the 3 new proposed houses. My biggest question on this are the driveways there, as we look across at that every day. And I understand that they fit the criteria. My question is, with traffic in and out of those driveways that close to, which Dan said, people turning in and coming in and out, that to me causes concern. What can be done about that? I don't know, but when I think of 3 driveways there with the amount of traffic coming, somebody coming, backing out of there, going south on Tonkawood, people cutting across and really going fast there concerns me. So I don't know what can be done about that, but it's concerning, so.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? All right, it looks like we are finished with public comments, so I will close the public hearing. Staff, I have a couple of questions that I heard there. Number one, who is responsible for clearing brush in that public right-of-way to make the visibility in the that sharp turn clear?
Yep. Chair Maxwell. So with any visibility issue, the city always turns to our engineering staff to go in there and look to see how sight lines look. That's something the city does regularly. We get complaints about sight lines too, and that's something the city can go out there and look at. With the right of way, we would have a bit more ability to do some tree removal in that area. If it's private property, rather difficult to require someone to remove trees. So with that acquiring that right of way, that would add a bit more ability to do that. So that hopefully answers that first question. That'd be something looked at outside of this review, obviously, but something staff could review and take a look at. Also probably talks a little bit with the county too, because that'd be a right of way that's adjacent to their road. That answers question 1. I actually have the question 2 written down
Sure,
and have
great.
an answer for that. The second question was regarding backing out on those properties. So Tonkawood Road is in a collector or arterial road, which those are busier roads within the city, ones where we do have concerns about people backing out and looking there. So something you can see here, but what is written within the resolution, is that staff added a requirement that there will be a turnout area because of, again, staff being concerned about people backing out this area. So each one of these sites will have some, as a requirement, when they come in for a building permit and when they're doing their driveway, they'll have to have an area for a vehicle to come out back into this area, then be able to drive forward onto Tonkawood Road instead of backing out into it. So, and that's something we have within our requirement with our code that was added.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ingmelson. It's now time for the commission to give comments, ask questions. Who wants to start? Commissioner Waterman.
Great, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Drew, for the presentation, and to the developer and the folks who spoke tonight. Overall, I'm very much in favor of this proposal. I generally support subdivisions where it's practical and in line with all the city ordinances to better utilize an underdeveloped lot. There's a lot to like about this in terms of zoning compliance. It meets all the R1 zoning requirements, tree preservation. I'm very much in favor of kind of proving that the tree protection ordinance can work with subdivision, and I think we've seen many examples of that, and this is another one. Floodplain work, it seems like there's been a lot of effort going into just a lot of attention, making sure that the floodplain alteration permit is handled appropriately and wouldn't inordinately affect neighbors or the other roadways or even these 4 lots. No variances, which kind of also gets to zoning, and really minimal grading. So all very much in support. And then lastly, I mean, the package came together really well. I agree with like the comments that are in there, but I was just really curious for public input, and I'm just, I'm not seeing a ton of letters or really any letters in opposition to it, and public feedback. That was the main thing I was interested in tonight, in addition to just sort of proving up that the city is really comfortable with, the city and the developer are really comfortable with the floodplain, and making sure that we're not creating 4 lots that are going to be prone to flooding or pushing water onto other people's property. So this seems like a good proposal to me. I'm in support of it.
All right. Commissioner Brink.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just second Commissioner Waterman's comments. It's a good plan. It meets all the minimum requirements, and I think the questions that we brought up this evening to staff and the developer and the owner have all been addressed. And yeah, thank you, staff and developer and residents who came and showed up tonight. That's just, I have a strong appreciation for all the effort and work that's gone into this, and it's a good plan. It meets all the requirements, and yeah, I'll support the resolution.
Commissioner Henry.
Sure. Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the applicant, and thanks a lot for the city staff for the presentation, and the neighbors and citizens to come in to voice their opinion about the project. When the 2 major opposition parts are lack of a 90-degree and some turnaround concerns, I think then there's been a lot of digestion and a lot of thought that went into their proposal. So it really fits in with the rest of the neighborhoods, and I can see why there isn't really that high level of opposition to the project. Most times neighbors say something about this and they don't like it, but from what I hear, seems like it does fit nicely in. So I think that the city and the applicant did a good job working together to come up with something that's going to be for the betterment of the community, and I'm full support of it as well. Sorry, one more thing. Now, this is maybe beyond the scope, but I do serve on the city's Sustainability Commission too, so I'd be remiss in my duties if I didn't mention this. But as the landowners and developers future for when people buy this, I'd encourage you, I know it's not required, but do something to work with the homeowners to make these homes ultra efficient so they can use less energy, and that's going to be better for the community and the earth as a whole too. So think about that as you go along. Thank you.
I agree that 4 single-family homes on this lot make sense. I was considering or wanted to hear comments on whether this would be an appropriate place to have a little bit higher density. We had some public comments on that, and I know as a city we're trying to work on increasing housing stock of different types. But given the R1 zoning here, the difficulty with the floodplains, the difficulty with trees, the increased traffic along this particularly difficult intersection, it makes sense that 4 homes here is an appropriate use. And I appreciate especially the improvements in stormwater management, and then allowing these to be customized to the particular owner, so we don't have all those details here. But overall, I am in favor of this proposal. I'm sensing that we're ready for a motion. Is anybody here willing to make a motion that we recommend the City Council adopt the resolution approving the request for a preliminary and final plat and floodplain alteration permit for a 4-lot subdivision at 15719 Minnetonka Boulevard?
I'll make the motion.
Motion, Henry.
I'll second.
Second, Waterman. Staff, please poll the commission.
Brink,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Waterman,
Yes.
Chair Maxwell.
Yes. This is a recommendation to the City Council that will consider the item that's planned for the 21st of April. Thank you and good luck with your project. Next item is item 9, other business. I don't believe we have other business. So we'll move on to item 10, which is adjournment. Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
A motion, Waterman. Second,
Second.
Brink. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. We are adjourned. Have a good night.